In this video, we will explore how to simplify powers of I. Now recall what I is. I is a definition. It is a definition of the square root of -1. So I'm going to put that off to the side. I equals the square root of -1. Now, for our problems here at Westside, when you're simplifying an answer, you never want to leave a negative sign under a radical. Instead, you're going to replace it somehow with an I. So let's talk about how to simplify i's. So I equals I would be what you would write on a test. You can't simplify it anymore. You just leave it I squared, on the other hand, let's think about what it really means. I squared is really I times I, which means it's really the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. Now, you may realize that the square root of something times the square root of that very same something equals the root. So in this case, the root is -1. So I squared is equal to -1. Now, how could we figure out I to the third power? Well, we could rewrite I to the third power as I squared times I. Remember, I is really I to the first power, and if you add those two exponents up together, you get 3, so they're equivalent. But we don't want to leave it like this. We want to see if we can simplify it some more. And we just said I squared is -1, so I can replace I squared with -1. So I'm going to have a -1 times I, which simplifies to -I. So I to the third power is -I. You're always going to want to simplify I to the third all the way down to -I. Now let's look at I to the fourth. There's a couple different ways we could write this as a product of i's, but I'm going to start with one I know that's going to work. I squared times I squared. It's the same thing as I to the fourth, and we just established that I squared is -1, so it's going to be -1 times -1 is going to give me 1. So I to the fourth simplifies to a really nice number. It simplifies to 1. But how would we figure out I to the 15th? Well, I'm going to be a little slick about this. I'm going to try to break down I to the 15th into things that I already know. So I already know what I to the fourth is. So I'm going to simplify this as I to the fourth times I to the fourth times I to the fourth times I to the third. Notice if you add 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 3, you get 15. So these are equivalent. But instead of writing all those I to the fourths, they're really 1s times I to the third. So I could say that I to the 15th equals I to the third. But we never want to leave an exponent bigger than 1 for an I. So we're going to simplify this some more. We already established that I to the third is actually -I. So that would be the final answer. I to the 15th is -I. Okay, so let's think about this for a moment. We had to write all those factors out, and then we finally got to the answer. Well, what if we have a really big exponent? How could we get this thing simplified a little bit easier without having to write all of these out? Well, the reality is that we've got an I to the fourth, an I to the fourth, and an I to the fourth. Each time we have one of those, we're taking out a 4 from 15. Another way to think about that is if you divide 15 by 4, it'll be interesting to see what's left over. So 4 into 15 is going to be 3. 3 times 4 is 12, with the remainder of 3. With a remainder of 3. Oh. So maybe we have a process here. Maybe we can always divide the power of I by 4 And whatever the remainder is, it will become the new power of the I. So, we've got a bigger one down here. Let's test it out. I to the 99th power. So I'm going to write 99. And then I'm going to divide it by 4. 4 goes into 9 2 times. 8, 1, 9. 4 goes into 19 4 times. 16 with a remainder of 3. So I could rewrite I to the 99th as I to the 3rd power, which is equal to negative I. Turns out I to the 15th and I to the 99th are the same. And that is how you simplify powers of I.